you ever wonder what would happen if, well, if
you give a dad a podcast.
I'm what you call a nerdy fan. I nerd out at this stuff, hardcore.
You'll hear me talk about anime on here. You'll hear me talk about Power Rangers. You'll hear me talk about wrestling on here.
Okay.
I had a axe handle with a Twisted Tea on it. It was right after that Twisted Tea video went viral. And man, they went out and grabbed it and smacked a dude in the head with it. It was so...
That's great. I'd like to think of this podcast as a nostalgia moment for me. It's a show where I can talk about whatever I want.
I'm a human and animal chiropractor. There was a picture of me. It looked like I was on the side of a ramen box over in China.
So I took my kids with me to Comic-Con.
I thought that was really cool.
Well, I don't know if my wife should listen to this podcast.
We'll cut that part out.
You hope. Be like, and then Robert said this.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast. Available now on all podcasting platforms.
Hello everyone, this is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I want to tell you about a new podcast out called Falls Count Anywhere. It is a classic pro wrestling podcast that brings you the legends of wrestling with true wrestling fans Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. They bring on guests that are legends in this business, as well as wrestlers of today, promoters, referees, you name it. They have them on there, folks, and I encourage you to listen to them. If you're on YouTube, watch them. They drop every Saturday. They have their podcast. They drop it in the afternoon. So look forward to that podcast coming out. Falls Count Anywhere podcast with Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. Folks, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And enjoy the podcast.
Did you ever wonder what could have been with the AWA had things gone differently? Had their fortunes gone differently? Had certain wrestlers not left and perhaps more money would have been at the disposal of the Gagnes? Well, wonder no further. You can go to Brad Drake's YouTube channel and experience the 1987 Supermod for yourself, as Brad Drake starts off in May 1987 along with Greg Gagne, Baron Von Raschke, Vern Gagne himself, Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, Kurt Hennig, and a slew of others as he plays and saves the
Hey everyone,
AWA.
this is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. We are on today because of you. And in order to continue the podcast and get the guests on here that require some financial compensation, we're going to need help from people like you. Right now, we're attempting to get our YouTube videos monetized through YouTube. We need 1,000 subscribers in order to do that. So I have decided that if the 1,000 subscriber will get a free t-shirt like this from me and come on the show as a guest on the podcast. So subscribe today, and that 1,000 subscriber will be contacted by me and be given a t-shirt and come on the show. So subscribe today. If you already have, thank you. If you haven't, please do, and tell your friends and subscribe today. And we'll talk to you soon, and enjoy the podcast. Thank you for joining another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm your host, Brian Ferguson. My guest today has been a part of pro wrestling for many years. He has refereed, promoted, and worked with many of the icons of wrestling, including JBL, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and many others. He's also co-authored the book titled The Third Man, My Life and Times Inside the Ring and Out. My guest today, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Mr. James Beard. James, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, good to be with you, Brian.
So, you're in Texas. How's the weather down there? Because up here, it's where I'm at in Missouri. It's pretty nippy.
It got kind of nippy here actually a couple of days ago. Yeah, we've had a hot summer, and yeah, this is kind of welcome to me. I like cool weather, and this is nice for me. I like it.
Yeah, good. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. So, all right, a little bit about your background. So, if we could, you wouldn't mind, let's get into growing up. Where did you grow up at? Kind of how you were raised, and some of the schooling you've done.
Well, I was raised about 90 miles from Dallas, a town called Tyler. My family is from that area, and I grew up basically like any other kid in East Texas, and I watched wrestling on old black and white TV. I'm an old guy. I remember sometimes we had a good signal, sometimes we didn't. We had an antenna in it, and sometimes those Dallas stations didn't come in so well. But when wrestling came on, my folks watched it, and I watched it, and I became a fan. And I grew up in this area. Went to school here, and then I ended up going to college on a basketball scholarship and tore my knee up, and I came back to Tyler to TJC, graduated at TJC, and got a little bit more involved in music there, and then went to North Texas, and that's where I finished up, and I started playing in bands, in college, and that's what I was doing when I got involved in wrestling. So I got to know a few of the guys in the business. I was playing around the Dallas area, and gradually they kind of figured out I might have a clue, and the next thing I know, I'm kind of dabbling in it a little bit, and became a little bit more in demand, and there we go. One of those accidental careers.
You said you played in a band. What instrument did you play?
I played keyboards and sang. I was a lead singer most of the time. So,
okay.
So I did that for a long time. We opened for everybody you can think of.
Oh, wow.
I was most of the country artists for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad your parents were fans, because mine were not. They were not, and I'd have to go to my grandma's house quite a bit to watch it. So that's good you got into that. So after you got noticed, and how did getting into wrestling? What was your did you start out as a referee, or did you get trained in wrestling, or let's talk about that a little bit, about how you were trained. No. In those days, your training was you kind of got thrown in the water and told to swim, that kind of thing. Bruiser Bodie was a big part of that. He kind of egged me on a little bit, and I started working around the edges a little bit in the Dallas area, and the next thing I knew, I was working at the Sportatorium, and then the next thing I knew, I was working in Japan, and it just kind of built from there. But no, I didn't get trained at all. It was kind of a feel thing for me, and it all felt natural. The first time I got in the ring, I felt comfortable, and maybe that was partly because of being in music, and being up front for that. But I just kind of picked it up by listening more than anything else. I think I learned more. I tell people this all the time. I learned more listening than I did actually working in the ring, and fortunately, I was around a lot of guys that were willing to talk and teach, and guys like Skandar Akbar and Johnny Valentine and Red Bastine and Gary Hart. I mean, I had a lot of good teachers, and just learning that way was the way I shut up and listened. That's basically it. Yeah, you're like a sponge, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to know. I mean, I had a clue. I mean, from the time I was younger, I started looking at wrestling kind of in a different way than just, I guess, a fan would typically look at it. I started trying to figure out, why is this happening and how is this happening? And of course, I didn't know all the tricks until I got into the business. But and even then, it took a while to figure some things out. But I had a clue, and I kind of understood the psychology and that kind of thing, and that made it easier for me. And plus, I wasn't just a kid when I got into it. I was a little bit older than some of the guys that jump into it, And so I was mature enough to know that I needed to absorb as much as I could absorb, and without trying to tell everybody how smart I was. And that's and I say that because I see that a lot these days. A lot of the younger guys come in thinking that they already have it all figured out, and they just don't. I was willing to listen, and that helped me a lot. And it also helped me in getting over with the guys and becoming, part of the boys, I guess you would say. And that's a big part of it. Once you get to that point, then it makes it a lot easier for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you get in a little bit older, you're a little more mature, and you can you understand when to talk and when not to.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we were at the Cauliflower Alley Club a few weeks back, and that's where I met you, and you did the intro for the JBL,
right?
And
yeah,
I heard that your story and your background as well as with JBL and his story, how he got started. So I would love for our fans here today to kind of, if you could please, kind of tell us the story about how he got into it. I mean, you were a big part of that.
Yeah, I was the day I met John. I was sitting in the booking room at the Sportatorium with Skandar Akbar, and we had a hole in our main event that night for TV. I mean, this TV show that we were putting together, and our champion was going to face, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but for whatever reason, they weren't going to be able to make it. They were flying in from somewhere, and something happened, and we were sitting there trying to readjust the TV, which is not uncommon. That happened every week. You always have something you change. But while we were sitting there, the knock on the door in the middle of the afternoon, and I went and answered the door, and there was John. And he said, I'm John Layfield. I'm looking for a job. And he had been kind of kicked out of the nest. He'd been training with Brad Rangans up in Minnesota.
Okay.
And we sat there and talked to him for a little while. And of course, you see his size and his look and everything. And you could tell he had a clue.
Yeah.
And had been trained by Brad. So we felt pretty comfortable with that and just talking to him. And so, you get to a point where you can kind of tell with guys when you've been around for a while, you can kind of tell without ever seeing them in the ring if they may have some potential or something there that you could do something with. And Ack and I talked to him for a while and said, I tell you what, we'll just throw him into this match with our champion, which was Rod Price at the time. And, if he does well, then I'll let the thing go through, and we've got a big guy that we can work with.
Yeah.
And if he's not so good, then I'll just tell Rod to pin him, and it'll be over with. But we went through that night, and it worked out well. And from that moment on, John and I were like best friends. I mean, we had a lot of things in common. Growing up, our families were very similar. We had a lot of the same feelings about a lot of things, and it's just one of those things you just fit together.
Yeah.
And that's happened. I've been real fortunate. I've got a lot of great friends in wrestling, but there's a handful that you just have something special with, and John was one of those guys.
Yeah.
And I trained with him, helped him, work out and kind of polish off some things, and he just got better and better and better. He was one of those guys that wanted to learn and listened and watched and paid attention. The really good ones do that.
Yeah.
And you knew that he was going to make it in this business.
Yeah.
And I did everything I could to help him. And when he got to that point, he had the opportunity. He took off and did it. It just says a lot for him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. That was my next question about his. When you looked at him and you saw his in-ring and potential, did you think he would make the big time? And you already answered that, yes. And I knew he was going to do well. You never know what well means sometimes. Right.
You don't know if he's going to be a world champion in the largest wrestling company in the world, but he's going to be successful somehow. And I just felt that, and he absolutely did that. And it didn't happen overnight for him.
Right.
It took some incarnations, I guess, to get to that point, and the right opportunity.
Yeah.
To get to that point to where he had that chance to really show himself, and he did that.
Yeah. I was going to say JBL is probably one of the last wrestlers from that era that really played his role well. What I mean is in-ring, his persona as the wrestling god and all that. He was one of the last ones that really fired me up, and I'd actually get off my butt and stand up and yell at the TV.
And I tell guys this a lot when I'm working with them in training and seminars and things, but the great heels weren't afraid to get heat. And John's one of the few guys and one of the last on the major TV show that's willing to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and he bought into it and he did it well and you know, that's something you have to do if you're going to be successful. You can't a great heel who really gets heat can't want to kiss all the babies. You know, he's got to be that heel.
Yeah.
And John was willing to do that, and that made a difference for him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
mean, he was on was it SmackDown or Sweet, one of them, and you know, he still got it. All you got to do is talk, and you know, they get mad at him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, when I met him in person, totally, you know, nicest guy you'll probably ever meet. Talked to me for a few minutes when he signed my my action figure I had of him, and when I heard too he was giving all his proceeds to the Cauliflower Alley Club, that really touched my heart, because, and I'm not saying everybody, but there's some guys that they're just take the money and thank you and go, but I could tell he was raised right, and must be a Texas thing, right?
Well, you know, there's some good folks down there, that's for sure. But he's always been like that. I mean, even when he didn't have $50 in his pocket, he was always generous. And you know, nothing like the image a lot of people think of when they think of John or JVL. He's done a lot of good for underprivileged kids out in different places, not just here, but in other areas. And I'm really proud of him for those things. And he's been fortunate. I mean, he's smart money wise, done very, very well in financial situations, and you know, he's a guy that's willing to give back, and that means a lot to me too, because I that just proves that I was right about him all along, you know.
You have a good eye for talent, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay, you were a referee for a number of years.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your first match refereeing?
I don't even know if I can remember exactly who was in the first match. I mean, I worked around the fringes a little bit, you know, but one of the first night that I was in the business, you know, I ended up chasing Brody and Abdullah around the ring a few times. And, you know, I worked with you're talking about almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've worked thousands of matches, and it's kind of hard to remember all of them. And I've never been real good at record keeping or keeping a lot of, I guess, memorabilia and those kind of things, which I regret. I know guys that absolutely know every match they've ever been in, and the results and the times and the place, and they've got pictures of everything, and I just didn't do that. I wish I had.
Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, like Chris Jericho, he has a book out now that has all of his matches. He recorded everything. So it's something like that. So, yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about you've been to a lot of different places, some of your travel experiences. So is there a travel experience, you're riding with somebody or traveling with somebody or a group of guys that just sticks out in your mind that you could tell a story about a little bit for us?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's so many, because you know, my first, I guess, working at the sportatorium was great, but my first really big break came going to Japan, and that kind of made my career for me for the most part, because I went over there thinking I was just going to go for like one shot, you know, or actually it was two shots, two different nights, but as it turned out, they offered me a position there, and as far as I know, I'm the only American or gaijin referee that's ever actually worked for a Japanese company.
Oh, okay, cool.
As part of the crew. I mean, I know there's other referees that's gone over there and done shows and tours and that kind of thing, but as far as being hired by a company as a regular member, as far as I know, I'm the only one, and I've done that for a couple of different ones. So that was a great opportunity. I did a lot of travel with those guys, of course, and a lot of great experiences with those. And probably the most fun I ever had on a foreign tour was working in Germany, and John was involved in that.
Okay.
I went over there for Ottawans, And I went over. The idea for it was I go over as an NWA official, which at the time I was working with the NWA, and Crockett, and I went over there and actually did kind of a heel thing, and it was so much fun. I know I finally figured out why these guys enjoyed doing that. I didn't cheat. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything illegal, but I sure got a lot of heat, and it was fun. And I just, that experience may have been my most enjoyable of all these years. I came out of the stands complaining about them treating the foreigners poorly, and really got on to the German people about it, and I didn't know if they were understanding me or not, but and all of a sudden I hear this big booming voice, Otto Wanz, he comes, he says, "Who are you?" And I'm like, so I started in on him, and he took my passport in front of about 7,000 people, and I'm like, oh God, and we built that thing up over a week or so's time, and into a final match with John against the champion, and even though I didn't cheat, John ended up winning it, and I was getting all kinds of heat. They hated me, and I loved it. It was fun.
You were Nick Patrick before Nick Patrick, right?
Except Nick actually really cheated. I did.
Yeah. But you were kind of one of the first ones that got heat. Yeah. That's Nick's
a great referee. He did that was good. Yeah. No, that was fun. I understand. Like I said, I understand why guys enjoy working on that side of things.
Yeah. Cool. That's an interesting story. See, I'm learning stuff, so that's great. So you work for a bunch of different promotions. You talk about Japan a little bit, and World Class. What was one of your favorite promotions to work for that you just really enjoyed, and I know you've had a lot of them, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, if there isn't one in particular, that's okay, but there's always usually somewhere where you've worked where you just really enjoyed it. You got along with all the boys and all that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, working at home and in the sportatorium was a big deal, and whether it's World Class or USWA or Global. I'm, a lot of people don't know that much about Global. I mean, it's kind of a weird story, the way it started and the way it ended up, and how it morphed into something different, and it doesn't get a lot of the credit that it should get, I think, because of all the guys that came through there and started and got some experience and went on, and it's amazing how many times I've been told by people that, hey, I remember watching you after I got out of school on ESPN.
Yeah,
it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Although all that time I was working in Japan, so sometimes I'd be gone 6 or 8 weeks and come back, and I didn't get to do all of Global, but I did enough of it and they gave me enough, I guess, stroke is what I'm trying to do kind of what I wanted to, and it was fun. I enjoyed doing that. But the Japanese thing is number one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the atmosphere, the way the fans and the media treated the sport.
Yeah.
The opportunity to work with so many guys that were so well trained, and so and a mixture of Japanese guys and foreign guys. The one company I worked with over there, SWS, had actually had an agreement with WWF at the time. Okay. That was early '90s, and we get WWF stars over there on every tour. So I got to work with all the big names of the business over there, but I was actually working for the Japanese company, and it was a lot of fun, and it kind of gave me a little, I guess, an opportunity to know a lot wider variety of guys from different areas of the country, because they came from everywhere working for WWF. That experience in Japan really kind of, like I said, it made my career, really, because it gave me some validity here in the States. It was a big deal back then.
Yeah,
working in Japan was like you had to be really good to go over there, and I got lucky when Kendo Nagasaki. Tetsu Sakurada is actually his real name, but he was a very good friend, and he asked me to go over the first time. And like I said, I was planning on just a one experience type situation, and the next thing I know, I'm over there every month, and that lasted for several years.
Wow. I got to ask you about Japan, because every person that I've had on here that talks about Japan absolutely enjoyed their time over there, as far as their wrestling, the culture. Do you think Japanese style, or their promotions over there are a little bit underappreciated here? Because I've watched some like on Access TV, and when they have them on there, IWGP, but they don't really get the exposure that like WWE, AEW, Impact out of Canada. Do you think it's a little underappreciated here?
Well, maybe. It's a different world in Japan too, just like it is here now. They call New Japan strong style, but it's not the same strong style it was when I was working over there. Okay. Strong style in those days was more of kind of a semi-shoot. I mean, it was very tight, it had a lot of athleticism involved, but they've kind of taken some of the, I know there's guys that still do that, but a lot of the featured guys are doing more of the athleticism things, and not so much the strong part of it. And then there's the fact that none of the major companies over there that I know of now bring the top stars from here over there to compete on a regular basis. And that's, Baba always had a crew of American guys over there. You're talking about, of course, Bruiser and Hanson and the Funks. And I could go on and on and on. But they had kind of an American style, kind of a Texas style, really, over there, because the Funks influenced that a lot. Yeah. But they had that style over there, and it was such a I guess a big honor just to get to go over there. Yeah. You had to be really good. Yeah. And if you weren't, you'd get ate up. Yeah. And then back then, the prestige of that was such a big deal. Yeah. And that's changed somewhat. New Japan still has a lot of prestige, but some of the smaller companies and some of the other companies don't get the press that those two big companies got back in those days.
I was going to say, back in probably 15, 16, 17, they had some guys over there that were big here. They had Jericho, Kenny Omega, AJ Styles, the Good Brothers. They had a group of guys. The original Bullet Club came out of there, and in the last few years, it's kind of it's more. Do you think it's because the cost of bringing those guys over there? Because big names now aren't. It doesn't. It's not cheap, and. Do you think it's just a financial thing? Why they can't get them over there?
That's part of it, I'm sure. The COVID situation kind of hurt that too. When we had that. When I was going over there regularly, the reason it kind of curtailed for me during the mid to late 90s is that the economy got bad over there. And it kind of they didn't have the money, I guess, to spend on and plus people weren't coming out like they were before because of the economy and the financial situation. So all those things affect wrestling too, and I'm sure that's part of why that situation changed in the mid 2000 teens, whatever. But and some of those guys got big opportunities over here, like AJ and kind of hard to turn that down and come back home and make even more money.
I think sometimes too, it kind of, when you go over there, I've seen that where it kind of revitalizes your career. Like with AJ Styles, Jericho, the Good Brothers, those guys, they were stars, but they were kind of on a downward slope. They would go over to Japan for a year or two, kind of get revamped, and then they come back, and they're better. I think they're better. I think something about Japan, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because they get a break. They're not under as much pressure. I'm not sure. I don't know what
that's part of it. Part of it is the demand on quality, of wrestling there, and learning a different style and creating it. But see, that's what's missing in today's wrestling anyway. Is the territories provided that naturally, because if you go back and look at the territories, all the territories had different styles.
Yep.
And you take these guys out of Texas and send them to North Carolina, or send them to the northwest of Don Owens' place, or wherever. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a little difference in the style. You go to Detroit, there's a different style. And all those guys became so rounded and so well versed in how to work with all these different talents. And it just made them better. And plus, you had a way to get away from it. If you're really in a territory, you go up, and then you kind of stall out a little bit. You go somewhere else, and you're away from there. And you can come back a couple of years later, and you get hot again. And that's part of it too. I mean, the not being overexposed in one place, and that's what happens a lot of times today. I think a lot of these wrestlers become so exposed in these one or two companies that we have that have the big TVs, and after a while people just kind of go ho hum, and they're not a big deal. But whereas if they had another place to go and stay away for a while and come back and kind of recharge themselves a little bit, it changes everything for you. So there's a lot of things involved in the guys going to Japan and becoming better there, and then coming back, and they've got things that they're bringing with them too. So it's a lot of factors involved in that.
The territories, you bring it up. I'm glad you did, because I was going to bring it up. You were part of that era. I grew up in that era. I believe at one time, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell told me there was 26 territories around the country that you could go to if you were getting stale in one area. You could go to another area. They kind of did a little handshake deal with one promoter to another, and they could go there. Do you think it's kind of a lost art now to? You have WWE and you have AEW. Those are the ones they go back and forth from now mainly. And it's pretty much the same character. They have to change their name or whatever because of copyright and trademark and all that.
Right.
But back then you didn't have to change your name. You could be Ray Stevens and go to from AWA to Mid-Atlantic, and you could be Ray the Crippler Stevens. You could
you can build credibility here, and you can maintain that credibility and take it with you.
Right. Do you think that's a lost art?
Well, that's I don't know that it's a lost art, but I think it's a lost factor in the business today that changes everything. Guys don't become as rounded. If you go to if you go to one of those two companies, there's basically a similar style in everybody. I mean, there's a few guys that are exceptions to that, but for the most part, you look at them, and a lot of the matches look the same. A lot of the guys look the same. A lot of the guys work the same. The gimmicks, the images, the personas really don't factor into things, because they'll give them a gimmick or a persona and say, okay, you're a whatever. And they're that when they walk out of the curtain, but then when they get in the ring, they all work and it doesn't carry through to the work.
Right.
So they don't really learn that there's a difference, and there's a way to present something and be that when you get in the ring, not just walking through the curtain. And that's a part of it too. So, I mean, there's just not a way to get as well rounded. The indies are really better for that than any, and a lot of guys don't know how to take advantage of that.
I was going to say, the indies, to me, I mean, I live in Missouri, Southwest Missouri, and they have a company here, a couple hours from here, called Mid-States Wrestling. There's New Breed Wrestling. I go to those, one, because I think they're up and comers. They're really trying. They're trying to master their craft. They don't take 20 minutes to do an interview, and then they have a 5-minute match. It's more of they come out of the curtain, they might say a word or two, they get in there and kick butt or whatever, and then they get back out. To me, it's just kind of you said it a little bit better, some of the factors, but you pay a lot less too.
Well, yeah, that's true too. But a lot of those better indies, now there's some bad indies out there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's some horrific that are just run by people that ought to be buying tickets for sure.
Yeah.
But some of the better ones are ran by people who at least understand and appreciate the basic traditions of this business.
Yeah.
And those guys expect their guys to exhibit that in their matches and in the way they present their shows. And those are the places you need to look for if you're an indie guy.
Yeah.
And try to go to those places, and you can get some variety of styles, but you're still getting that basic, I guess, basic structure of how to present yourself and how to work in the ring, and at the same time you can get a variety of different styles there, and that's a good thing. The shame of it is once they get to that point, and then a lot of times they get picked up by one of the big companies, then they want to turn them into something that they're not.
Yeah,
and that's a shame.
Yeah. I got a great example of that. I don't remember if you remember in WWE, there was a guy named Simon Gotch.
I remember the name.
He had a handlebar mustache, had the kind of the old timer look.
Yeah.
When he was in World League Wrestling here in Missouri up at Troy there, he was Ryan Drake, and he played this character to the T, had a wonderful gimmick, and knew how to wrestle. It's like when he got there, they just took the fizzle out of the guy, and he only worked there for a couple of years, and he just said he couldn't take it anymore. The grind and it's just terrible.
That's been the case in the story for a lot of guys that's done that, and it takes all their energy away from them and all of their I guess their persona. If they really feel that and they're really that. And then you get there and they go, oh, no, we want you to be, you're going there, you're an Indian, and they want to be a cowboy, and that's just, I want to say that because it's one opposite, but you just get all of the heart taken out of yourself, and that's a shame, really.
Yeah, I think, they should give them a little more creativity, but, who am I? I'm just
but not too much.
Not too much. You gotta
sometimes that may be one. I will watch this stuff with AEW sometimes, and they talk about we've got all this creative freedom and that kind of thing. Well, sometimes that's not a good thing because some of these guys just don't have the wherewithal to know how to use that freedom, and it becomes almost like the inmates running the inside them. And you got to have some kind of control, but at the same time, it starts at the top. It really does.
Yeah.
And the guys that really understand how to get the most out of somebody are the guys that should be running those things, and unfortunately, that doesn't always happen.
I was going to talk about you were a booker. And that is a very, I've talked to some other people that have done that job, and you have to be very creative and have a very good mind of how to package somebody to sell that and to understand that and to put, I guess, basically butts in seats, right? And watch your company. What was that process like for you as a booker? When your talent came in and they said, okay, what was your thought process and how you did that?
Well, first of all, that's the part of the business I enjoy the most. Okay. I enjoy the creative side of it. I do enjoy being in the ring. I mean, I'm at a point now where I may get in the ring once or twice, but I don't want to be in there 6 or 7 matches anymore. But the creative side of it is what really drew me to it anyway, to begin with, and that's what I wanted to do. And fortunately, I got those opportunities. Started in Japan, actually. And my philosophy has always been to have an open door. I mean, listen to everybody and not discount any ideas. not necessarily take them. And sometimes you hear an idea and you go like, that might work, but I have to tweak this and tweak that and try to make it, work. And the whole idea is to create a situation where you got, for the most part, personal issues. I mean, that's an old formula. Jerry Jarrett, it's his deal.
Yeah.
He had always said, create personal issues, and he's right. If you do that in whatever area that you're doing it in, those things are going to be interesting to people because they can relate to it. Mm-hmm. And that's the same as working a match. If fans can relate to it and understand it, they'll get into it.
Yeah.
A lot of these matches I see today, they do a lot of things and people may pop for them and make a lot of racket, or react to them.
Yeah.
But when the match is over with, they don't understand what happened. They don't know the point of the match. Why did they do that and that kind of thing. And creating an angle or a personal issue, you got to have a reason for things, and people have to understand it and relate to it. And if they can relate to it, then they'll care.
Yeah.
If you make them care, then they've got an emotional investment in what you're doing, and that's the whole key to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that piece right there you just mentioned about the emotional connection, the personal issues brought up, that is such a missing piece in today's wrestling. And I'll be honest, I don't watch it nearly as much as I used to. And that's part of it, is because I don't have a piece in it. I don't have I understand what that guy's doing or that woman's doing, why she's doing that or he's doing that.
Let me give you a perfect example of that. And that,
sure,
and
please.
This is really a shame that it happened this way, but
sure.
AEW is a company that kind of built on the smart mark thing, where they expect a certain kind of match, but they never really increased their viewership or their fan base. It got to this point and it's been basically the same.
Yeah.
When they had an issue in the back in the dressing room, there was more interest in what they're doing than what ever happened to them in the ring.
Yep.
And it was because it was a personal issue. Now, I don't suggest anybody doing that,
right,
or doing it that way, but it just kind of drives home the point that people get interested in those things.
Yeah.
I mean, why are these guys upset with each other? Why did this happen?
Yeah.
You can if you can do that and create that in a wrestling sense and in a creative sense in the ring, then you got something that people want to watch.
Yeah.
And that for me, that's a perfect example of the difference between just doing things and actually having people care about what happened.
You're exactly right.
If you go back and even myself,
yeah,
I was kind of curious, like, why did this happen? And I wanted to know about it.
Yeah.
And I hear guys talking about it. I get to listen to Jimmy Cornette on his podcast, and I'm going like, this is crazy, but it's interesting, But and that's the point. You got a personal issue going on, and people want to hear about it.
Yeah,
they want to see it. They want to know how it ends. Unfortunately, this one's probably not going to end well. But in a wrestling context, you could do something that creates those same emotions, and you do have control over how it is, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That what's funny is I was a guest on a podcast last week, first time being a guest, and they brought that up, that the AEW issue, and I told them, I'll be honest, I thought it was a work at first because it didn't seem like that could really, happen. But it did really happen, and there's a lot of heat over it right now. And you're right. That's pinged everybody's mind. What's going on here? Why are we doing that? And they're not concentrating on the other stuff. So you're right. I really, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because that's interesting. So booking wise, you did Japan, world class. Is there anywhere else that you booked that? Mid-Atlantic or wherever. I'm not sure. I know you did a lot.
Yeah, I had a lot of, some local places. We had a deal going in Dallas a couple of years ago, SWE.
Okay.
And we were cooking.
Yeah.
We were doing some good. And there was kind of the same old story that a lot of promotions that get started hot and things happen, and some outside voices became involved. And I was booking it to begin with, and during the time we really got some attention, and we were getting a lot of attention. And then the next thing you know, you got people coming in and, this, that, and the other. I'm not going to get into details or personalities or anything.
Right.
But there were things that happened that shouldn't have happened. Some people that got involved that shouldn't have been involved. Voices that were being listened to that shouldn't have been listened to, and that took all the momentum away from us. That company should have sustained. It should still be working, and we were doing really well. I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way either. But I've booked a lot of local promotions like that, and I had a lot of input in global during those years, and it's been one thing, and I'll still try to do a little bit of that here and there. It's just not a lot of opportunities. That's the problem. And unfortunately, a lot of times when somebody does have a situation where they can start something up and may have some potential, they usually start out listening to the wrong voices. They don't go looking for the guys that really, can. They go looking for the stars, and the stars. Now, what I've found out is a lot of stars only know how to get themselves over. They don't really understand the process of getting a whole promotion over. And it's kind of like a lot of coaches in football and baseball. Some of the greatest coaches and managers and that sort of thing weren't the greatest players. They were the guys that sit and watch and listened and learned. And they became the ones that led the guys to the World Series and to the Super Bowls and that kind of thing. So that, unfortunately, in wrestling, that doesn't happen a lot.
No, I agree. Like you said, there were at one time 26 territories, and I'm sure there's disagreements then, but for the most part, you had a good quality programming, and all the heat, and you were a big part of that. I know with World Class and in Japan, and I can't say enough how much that is missed today. You got all these writers for WWE and AEW that, I don't know, they don't understand the business, I guess, and I'm not knocking them. I mean, they're making money, they're doing something, but I mean, it just doesn't have the personal touch, like you said. So
and there is a difference in just writing and writing some kind of format and booking. The difference in booking. Booking, you put the matches together and book the guys you really want to book and put them in the right places. And like I said, create as many personal issues as you can that people can relate to and that kind of thing. And that's not really the point these days in a lot of cases. And it's a shame. I sit and watch some of this stuff, and I think I sure would like to have some input here and there, but I'm not the only one that feels that way.
You're not.
I think I could fix that, but you got to have the powers that be behind you and allow you to do that in order to fix it, and that usually doesn't happen. I'm hoping some. I kind of see a little bit in WWE. I see a little bit of maybe moving that direction a little bit. And I'm hopeful for it because I love the business and I love wrestling. I want it to be good, but I can't watch it. I just can't. I can't because it doesn't bring me in. It doesn't make me care. And if I know all the little tricks, but if I see something that can do that for me, I still want to watch. I just can't.
No, most people I talk to have on this podcast tell me the exactly same thing, that they're just the lostness of the personal issues of the real heat and real baby faces, and it's sad. I mean, I hope someday it'll come back. Let me ask you this, and I've asked several people this, and I've had the same answer. You might be different. Do you think the territories can ever come back?
I don't think they could come back the way they were. I mean, I think you can have maybe some regionally successful programs that do well. That's what we were striving for with SWE when we started it. We really weren't trying to be a national company.
Right.
It was about, you know, Texas and Louisiana and Oklahoma and Arkansas and that area, and just trying to be a big fish in that bowl, you know, or as big a fish as we could be in that bowl.
Yeah.
And not really thinking about competing with WWE or AEW or anybody, just trying to be our own person and our own promotion. And we started out very well doing that. But, and I think those things can be accomplished if you have the right situation and you stick to it and have the patience to develop it that way and have your own personality. Don't try to. You can't. We used to have a saying: you can't out Vince. Yeah. And a lot of promotions tried to do that and failed, and a lot of them with a lot of money tried to do that and failed.
Yeah.
And I, you know, that's something that you have to just be your own person, your own format and stick to it. And that's hard to do. You have to have patience to do that. It's like a match.
Yeah.
In order to develop a match, you have to have the right timing and the right pacing. And those are two arts that are almost lost these days.
Yeah.
There's nobody wants to sell, you know, at least not really sell. They'll sell for a moment and they'll back up again. And you know, you look at guys like a Ricky Morton and Ricky Steamboat and something about Ricky, I guess, I don't know, but you know, those guys understood that timing, that pacing, how to get the fans behind them before they ever did anything else, and that's why they were so successful. And guys, for some reason, don't snap to that these days. And the heels don't want to really get heat, and there's no rules. Rules don't mean anything. You know, coming from a referee standpoint, that's one thing I miss most, because the rules in wrestling these days, and in the major companies, most companies, they're not consistent. They're not. The referees don't appear to have the authority to try to enforce them. Right. That's a fine line to walk as a referee, is trying to find that point to where you look like you're trying to, but you're really not. You know. Yeah. And you know, I tell guys when I work with them, I said, if you just work with me, I'll give you your opportunity to get heat. But you're not going to put it on me. Right. And that's the whole key to that timing and pacing thing that they don't understand for the most part these days. Right. No. And it was such a blessing to work with guys who did understand that, because together we could create a situation where they got their heat. I look like I'm doing my job, and the babyface got his sympathy, and we end up with the right formula to have a great match. Yeah. And it takes all of us working together to do that. Yeah. These days, referees are basically just in most cases, and I'm not saying this in every case, but in most cases, they're just kind of a necessary pawn in the ring, and they're not really part of the match. Yeah. And I get, one of the things I wrote in my book, I wrote a whole chapter about the referee position and how I feel about it. And one of the first things I said is that a referee in professional wrestling is not like football or baseball or other sports, in that you don't want to recognize that there's a referee in those unless it's just a situation where you have to. Yeah. In wrestling, a referee is actually part of the match, or should be. Yeah. Not the focal point in most cases, but at least a part of it, where he's enhancing what's going on and making it better. And not somebody who's invisible. Right. I keep hearing the great referee is the ones that's invisible. That's baloney in wrestling. Yeah. It's just you're part of the match, or you should be. Yeah. And all of those things have to be in existence for you to be a part of it. And that's a big thing that's missing these days, and I hate that. Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. It used to be back in the day, you know, the referee, you know, sometimes they get ran into and be knocked out. Let's bring somebody else in, or they're picking the other guy up and they swing around and the boots hit the referee and he gets knocked down, or, you know, integral part of the match where they push him because they only got a 2 count and they're starting to shove the ref. And you're right. I mean, you don't see that anymore. There's
a place for anything in wrestling, but it's all about doing it at the right time. Yeah. And for the right reasons. Right. You know, I've taken my share of bumps. Yeah, but I took them when it was right to take them, you know, and And I always think about this story, and I've told this before. Working with Killer Tim Brooks, who was a scary heel, a very aggressive heel. A good friend of mine, but he was even in the, being in the ring with him was scary. And there was a time early on I was working with him, and he had a guy choking him on the ropes, and I was trying to get him to break. He wouldn't break, and I kept trying to get him. He said, "Pull me back by my ears," and I'm like, "What?" Thinking, I'm not doing. If I do this, I know what you're going to do. I'm not doing that. He goes, "Do it." He kept, and I said, "Okay." So I reached down and grabbed him by. Of course, I'm not really yanking it, but we're working it back. And I come back with him like this, and he whirls around at me, and he starts to come toward me, and I just pointed at my shirt. Yeah. And he backed off.
Yeah.
And, after the match was over with, we're in the dressing room, and I said, "Man, I didn't know if you were serious or not." He said, "Yes, I was serious." He said, "It got me and you both over because it showed that I'm hard to handle. I'm out of control, and you went to extreme measure to try to control me.
Yeah.
And then when I whirled around on you, you pointed your shirt, you got your authority right there." And so it got us all over. And I think, I always thought, that's something that guys just don't understand these days, how important that is to have that factor in a match. And it's a shame, but that's what we've come to.
Yeah, it is a shame. It is a shame. Let's talk about your book for a minute. And then you wrote a book, Third Man. Yeah. My life in times in and outside of the ring. Tell us a little bit about it. You worked on it. I saw a co-author, Mark James. Is that accurate or? Yeah. Well, actually, I wrote the book myself. Mark was my publisher. Yeah. Okay. And of course, did the editing and that kind of thing. It's great. Mark is an incredible guy, great friend, and a great historian of the business. And I basically wrote it myself. And it's mostly about my experiences with the guys, the Texas area, the guys I worked with there, and there's some other things thrown in here and there. Like I said, the chapter about the refereeing, and then there's some other little stories here and there. But the main point of the book was working, some of the bigger names that I worked with, the Von Erichs, Freebirds, Gino Hernandez, Chris Adams. There's a story in there about John JBL and several guys that I worked with, and so it's not so much an autobiography thing. It was I didn't intend to write that. It was mostly my experiences with those guys and my take on certain things that happened, and a few stories involved too. So it's been fun to have that book out there. I'm trying to finish another one. I've been good 3 or 4 years and it's going to be more about the territories that I worked in, about working in Japan, the story about the USWA when I went there, and some global stuff, Eddie Gilbert. Just kind of a little different approach to this book. Good. Oh, well, I'll be looking for that, and we will have your book's description, down in our description, and where to get it and all that. So, I am gonna buy the book. I have not had the opportunity to read it yet, but I am going to. I'm looking forward to it. One more question. Well, actually, two. I'm sorry. All right. You were awarded the Charlie Smith Referee Award back in 2016 by the Cauliflower Alley Club. What was that moment like for you, being honored like that? Probably, I've been really blessed. I've been inducted into several halls of fame and some other honors, like lifetime achievement things and that kind of thing, which is, when you think about it, as a guy who's primarily known as a referee and that kind of thing, that doesn't happen a lot, and I've been lucky. Yeah. They created that award, and I was the first one to receive it. And that meant a lot. It's kind of like the ultimate thing, because it's not just one territory or one vision of it. It's like Cauliflower Alley is involved with the whole industry, basically. Yeah, right. And that was a great honor. And John came in as my presenter. Okay. And of course I returned the favor for him this year. Yeah. And that was a great honor too, that he asked me to do that. Yeah.
it's just like Medusa said, she received that Iron Mike Award last year.
Mm-hmm.
That John received.
Yeah.
And she said, and she was talking to us about the awards and stuff, and she's got plenty of Hall of Fame awards herself.
Right.
And she said, I think this is probably the premier award in the industry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the Cauliflower Alley thing was a big deal. And I've become involved in the Tragus Thez Hall of Fame in Iowa.
Yes.
And those people, it's not kind of like my second family. That's what I tell them. They're my family. Jerry Briscoe, I love that guy, even if he is from Oklahoma. He's so friggin' smart and knowledgeable about the business and such a good guy. And he's the one that kind of Troy Peterson, of course, runs a lot of the day-to-day things, and Chad Olson and all those guys. They're just incredible people, and that's such a fun experience every year, and that's a big deal for me too.
Yeah. All right, one more question.
Okay.
What are you doing now? You said you were working on your book, but is there other projects that you're working on as well?
Well, I've been helping a friend of mine who has a training program in Louisiana. Dan, he worked in global as Dapper Danny Davis. And he's got about 20-something students in Louisiana, and I've been going down there about once a month, and he's running shows just for the students. He might bring one guy in or two guys in just to kind of give them some other perspective and that kind of thing. But I've been helping him out some down there called UWE.
Okay.
And around the Alexandria area mostly. And I've enjoyed that, working with some young guys, and there's some guys that have some potential there that he's got. And I go to Sherman, Texas once a month, and my old friend Robert Langdon has a Texoma promotion up there, and I don't, I just kind of like an advisor kind of thing there more than anything else. When they ask me to do something, I'll do it, but it's something I've been doing for a number of years, and in fact, I'll be up there this Friday. And Tim Storm and myself, we're kind of the same situation there. We've known Robert a long time, and we put up with him and try to help as much as we can. And that's fun. They've got a lot of guys there that work in the indie programs, and some guys he brings in as well, and I always enjoy working with younger guys. Yeah. And then I work with Jerry Bostic has a world class promotion and I work with Jerry, and in fact I'll be in Sherman Friday night and in Waco Saturday night with Jerry. And I did the same thing there. I basically kind of helped run the back and put the matches together and that kind of thing. So that's all of that's kind of the creative side of things that I'm working with now. I get in the ring once in a while if it's important or if I feel like it's something I need to do. And I still enjoy that. I still believe I'm as good as I ever was for a match or two. I don't want to work a whole night anymore like that, but I still enjoy it when the time comes and it's right. But those are the things I'm doing mostly now, and I enjoy working with younger talent. I like to see them develop and try to give them as much advice as I can and help as much as I can, and I'll do clinics and some training situations, and I enjoy those. Tim and I have done a bunch of those together, and I enjoy that. It's just kind of like giving back, I guess, more than anything else. After the NWA, I was running NWA for a while when Bruce Tharp owned it. I was the director of operations there, and I was involved in all that transition between Bruce and Billy Corgan, and that was all interesting. That wasn't interesting. That's probably going to go in the book too. But,
all right, I'm looking forward to that. I'd love to hear that story.
Well, I mean, I was in the middle of it a lot, and it wasn't. It was an interesting experience. It wasn't bad. I worked with them a little bit after the transition came, and Tim, of course, is still there, and I'm proud of him for having that opportunity.
Yeah.
And that we didn't talk about the NWA, but that was a great experience as well. Those few years that I was involved in that kind of trying to regain some prestige with the NWA. And
yeah, we can talk about it if you want. Tell us a little bit about it if you don't mind. If you got a few minutes, I don't want to take too much of your time.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just I kind of fell into that when Bruce and kind of gave me that opportunity, we didn't have any money. I mean, that was a problem.
Yeah.
Had no money, but we did things that I think that kind of helped reestablish a little bit of the value to the name and to the belt. I mean, we had an association with New Japan.
Okay.
Rob Conway was a big part of that. Carried the title a couple of times. Jack Dane, and we had a couple of great Japanese champions during that period of time. And then at the end, of course, I had the pleasure of seeing my friend Tim Storm, win that title, and that kind of led into the transition, and it worked out really well for him. That was an interesting period of time.
Mm-hmm.
It was frustrating because a lack of money, a lack of funds, and
right.
a lot of, you got 30 different little promotions, and all of them are wanting this and wanting that, and trying to pacify all of those, and trying to keep some kind of momentum going or gain some momentum. And it was a tough situation for a while, but it's also rewarding in a way, because in the end, we got it to a point to where it was valuable to somebody.
Yeah.
And they've taken it and done some things, and continue to do things. And the NWA means a lot to me. That's to me, it needs to be vital. It needs to be a part of the business. And I always wish them well, whether I'm a part of it or not.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal for me.
Yeah. No, I remember, the NWA in the 80s, 70s, 80s, Flair, Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Magnetia, I could go on and on. Great promotion, kind of, unfortunately hit some bad times in the 90s but I mean, hopefully now, I'm starting to watch it again on YouTube and Fight TV, and they had a little hiccup during the pandemic where they had to shut everything down, unfortunately, and they lost some good talent to the big wigs because they scooped them up because they weren't getting paid. And hopefully it'll get to where it needs to be. I think it will. I think Billy Corgan has a good vision from what I've seen so far, and hopefully it'll work out. And I'd love to see it.
That's my hope too. I'm a big guy about tradition and keeping things going that means something. And the NWA means a lot. If you worked in this business back in the territory days, or you were part of NWA at some point, and that history means a lot to me. And I'm hoping that they can do something to make it even more relevant today.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I want to thank you for coming on. It was so good to meet you in person at the Cauliflower Alley Club in Las Vegas this last reunion. You were very cordial and talking to me, and you didn't know me from a hole in the ground, but you took the time to talk to me there, and I really appreciated that, because believe it or not, you're a well-known name in the wrestling world. And when I heard you were going to be there and do the presentation for JBL, I was hoping I got to meet you, and I did. And you're a very nice person, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and talking to me today, coming on this podcast. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate it. So, Mr. James Beard, thank you.
It's been my pleasure. That's what Cauliflower Alley is all about. Is kind of all of the family. Whether you're a fan or involved in the business some way, or retired or whatever, and that it's not hard to be friendly with people.
It is not. It is not.
Yeah.
Those guys there are all friendly. I mean, every person I talked to, every wrestler person, whatever, all very nice, very, very professional, very, sit there and talk to you for 10 minutes if you want to. Didn't bat an eye like I got to talk to these other people, and I really appreciate that. So I will be back there. Trust me. I will be back there.
Most of us come from the same place. We were all fans before we were involved, and that that's something you have to remember when you're in this business. No matter how well you do, and I tell guys, and this is one of the things when I did John's presentation, I really wanted to say is that no matter how successful you are, no matter how many matches you win, how many titles you win, no matter how much money you make, when you get through this, when you walk out of that ring the last time, the most important things to you will probably be the experiences you had and the relationships you made. And that goes for everybody involved, not just the guy, So it's important to remember that when you're meeting with other people.
Yeah. All right. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Beard, thank you for coming on today, sir. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brian.
All right, folks, if you're watching, thank you. If you're listening, thank you. And please subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.